our May SAC meeting. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. I know it is a super, super busy time for all of us. Do appreciate Aaron for allowing us to meet virtually this week. I do think that will be helpful for everyone, just knowing the season that we're all living in. Since this is a virtual meeting, please ensure that your video is streaming and that you are visible during the duration of the meeting. Your microphone should be muted when you are not speaking. However, all discussions must be made available to the public, so make certain your mic is unmuted when speaking. Commissioner, you have anything you'd like to add before we jump into our agenda?
I'll be very brief. Thank you, Chair Ballinger. First of all, congratulations, everyone. It's May. Many of you have got graduation, and many of you probably have testing going on right now. So wish you the absolute best of luck with your students. I'm sure we'll come through and fly with flying colors. So very looking forward to the results again next year. But with that being said, most of the things I would give you updates on, we're going to have in presentations. There's only one thing I would like to add, and I think I even mentioned this in our last Superintendent Advisory Council, is we are continuing our work with local accountability with districts and also trying to highlight districts' work that they've been doing on their own. We have now three different districts that we have highlighted with videos on our YouTube channel. Shelby County was our first one that we did with their local accountability model, and Rock Castle was our second, and we have just finished up Kenton County. So Henry Webb, Dr. Webb in Northern Kentucky. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Ballinger and Dr. Webb both worked with John Tanner in their work with local accountability. And Shelby County was one of our L3, it is one of our L3 districts. And then our next one will be Fleming County. And some of the things, if you worked with Brian Kreisman, I'll get texts from him on a weekend on another idea that he's had put in. He's so excited for his latest, some of the latest work he's added with the local accountability there in Fleming County. So very excited for that. Also want to go ahead, for those of you that may be interested in getting into the local accountability work, we have published the local accountability guidebook and toolkit. It has 6 action steps. Of course, it's one of various different ways, but it will give you a little bit of a framework and kind of a walkthrough of how to develop a local accountability model. And of course, if you wanted to talk with Dr. Ballinger and also with Dr. Webb, I'm sure they would share with you the work of John Tanner. I think that's excellent work also too. But the point there is making sure that we have buy-in, trust, transparency with our local school districts and the people within our community. So very excited about that work. One other thing I'll mention before, because we're going to get into 257 and some other items too, testing and other issues, other items on the agenda. Our policy advisors are working on the legislative guidance as a result of the legislative session. We do have guidance on House Bill 67, the traceable communication. That is on our website already. If you need that is already, we try to get that one out a little more quickly, since how we figured that was a hot topic for everyone across the Commonwealth. So again, policy advisors here are working on the legislative guidance. Hopefully we'll have that posted by the end of this month, and that'll help you out as far as all the bills that were passed that were education related. I won't get into any more, but that's just the short end, and I think most of what I would want to update you on was going to be in presentations anyway. So if anyone's having questions, I'd be happy to answer any or anything that may be of interest. If not, you have my cell phone, of course, 606-371-2587. Again, 371-2. With that being said, I'll turn it back over to Chair Ballinger.
Thank you, Commissioner. This time, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to take our roll call.
All right. And if you didn't see it, there is now a link in the chat to those videos that the Commissioner just mentioned. All right. Amanda Abel. Wayne Ackerman.
Here.
Matt Baker. Carrie Ballinger.
Here.
Larry Begley.
Here.
Buddy Berry.
Here.
Wes Bradley. Robin Cochran.
Here.
Tom Cochran. Ralph Hamilton.
Here.
Damian Johnson. Bob Lawson,
Here.
Barry Lee,
Here.
Matthew Matting,
Here.
Chad Molly,
Here.
Todd Neese,
Here.
Brian Robinson,
Here.
Mike Rowe, Sherry Satterley, John Seiler,
Here.
Wayne Sizemore,
Here.
Seth Southard, Sarah Wasson, Leonard Whalen, and Brian Yearwood. Okay, that is all the roll.
Thank you, Erin. Next on our agenda, we do need to approve the minutes from our February meeting. Those minutes were emailed to you earlier in the week by Erin. I'll give you just a moment to look over those, and then we will need a motion for approval. Anyone want to make a motion to approve our February minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve by Barry.
A motion by Barry Lee. Is there a second for those?
Second.
Second by Superintendent Neese. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda, we have our first topic, which will be information on the Kentucky Department of Education Strategic Dashboard. This is being presented by Ms. Susan Strange, who is the Strategic Plan Program Manager in the Division of Strategic Planning and Research in the Office of Commissioner. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Okay, just to make sure everybody can see my screen and hear me, yes? Great, thank you. Okay, so my name is Susan Strange and I work on the strategic plan, and we have built a strategic dashboard that goes along with our strategic plan. So today I would like to review the strategic dashboard with you and then get your feedback on the dashboard. So some of the questions that I'm going to ask is, how could you use this? What information would help you drive people to the dashboard to get that information from there? And is there anything else that you think that we should include on this dashboard? So first, I want to show you how to access the dashboard. If you go to our Department of Education page and you look at the Commissioner of Education tab, you'll see Strategic Planning and Research. This is our homepage, so you can get to the strategic plan, which blows it out a little bit more with some more information on the strategies and the initiatives on the plan. And then you can click here to get to the strategic dashboard. So this is where most of the data lives around our strategic plan. So our strategic plan is made up of 8 objectives. 5 of those are what we consider customer stakeholder objectives, so they're outward objectives, and then 3 of those are what we consider internal objectives. The first page that you land on when you click on the dashboard is what we're considering an overview page. It gives you a quick snapshot of all of the goals that we have established for the strategic plan and lets you know kind of where we're at. Then you can also click here to get a little bit more information about how we gathered this information, where it came from. Each of the tabs across the top are the objectives or our goals. So for example, this one is the accountability one. Our goal is to implement an accountability model that includes vibrant learning, making it meaningful and useful for all learners. For this one, we have a timeline. So this is about the bill that Dr. Fletcher was talking about earlier, and that Dr. Stafford will speak to you about this later on in the meeting. It's the new assessment and accountability bill that was passed. So that was our milestone for this year. So we've met that. And then we also look at some key performance indicators on here. And what we look at is local accountability. So where are our districts in these stages of local accountability development? And if you read down here on the bottom, this includes all 171 districts, plus the Kentucky School for the Blind and School for the Deaf for 173 total. And this information comes from the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, the Division of Innovation. The Regional Innovation Specialists gathered this information for us. So you can also switch this. So this is local accountability. We also have where they are on Portrait of a Learner development. and then where we are putting vibrant learning into the classroom, into our instruction. Okay, if I move on to the next one, our next goal is chronic absenteeism. So we want to decrease the statewide chronic absenteeism rate from 28% in 2023-24 to 15% by 2028-29. And then on this one, we have a filter because you can filter this by our demographic groups. Moving on down from here, these are our key performance indicators. So this first one is what we're considering a data card. So this is some of that static information or that year-to-date, those year-to-date numbers that we're collecting. So for this one, we did an awareness campaign. We had billboards, the sides of buses. We had YouTube advertisements. So this was just a snapshot of how many people we were able to reach and how many things happened around that awareness campaign. Then we also have the positive behavioral intervention system and resources, how many schools have gotten that fidelity recognition, and then how many educators have we trained. And then of course, chronic absenteeism resources, how many educators were trained on that as well. You can switch the KPI here, so we can also look at our school rates. So we want to decrease the percentage of Kentucky schools with high or extremely high rates of chronic absenteeism. We're also looking at that same thing that we were looking at in the ANA system. We're looking at the stages of vibrant learning experiences development because we believe if there are vibrant learning experiences happening in the classroom, then hopefully that will help combat the chronic absenteeism. Okay. Moving on. I'm sorry. Okay, so our next goal is early literacy. So we want to increase the elementary grade band proficiency rate on the Kentucky Summative Assessment in reading from 42% in 2023-24 to 55% by the 2028-29 school year. As you can see, this is the percentage of students scoring proficient or distinguished on the KSA in reading, 3rd through 5th grade. So that elementary grade band is what we're looking at. Again, this can be filtered by our demographic groups. We also have a data card here. So this is in regards to the Kentucky Reading Academy. So we're just doing a cumulative count to how many educators are a part of the Kentucky Reading Academies. We're also looking at decreasing the elementary grade band novice rate on the KSA in reading. And then increasing the level of implementation of the MTSS framework components as evidenced by that implementation survey. Okay. Early numeracy is set up almost the same way, and it's got a lot of parallels to the literacy. So increasing the elementary grade band proficiency rate on KSA in mathematics from 42% to 55%. Again, it has our demographic filter on our graph here, our goal graph. We have the MTSS framework for mathematics here. We also have that elementary grade band novice rate that we want to decrease. And then we have a data card around the numeracy academies, and then some more information in regards to the Mathematics Achievement Fund and the KMIT and the initiatives that we're doing with that. Okay. Our 5th and final customer and stakeholder goal is educator recruitment. So we want to increase the completion rate of eligible students in the teaching and learning pathway from 6% in 2023-24 to 14% by 2028-29. We also have a data card on this one to elevate the teaching profession. We've got the Go Teach KY webpage, so we're looking at active users on that, the event count, how many people have visited, downloads, things like that. And then we've also got Facebook views and interactions and Instagram views and interactions because we're just trying to elevate that teaching profession. And then we've got the teaching and learning pathway. We're looking at enrollment, concentration, and completion rates within the teaching and learning pathway. Concentration is they've taken 2 or more classes. Completion would be the full 4 credits that are counted for the teaching and learning pathway. We're also looking at Ed Rising participation. We want to increase that Ed Rising participation number. And we're looking at increasing enrollment in those educator preparation programs. Karen, I'm sorry, are you on here? Did you want to say something?
I'm on here, but no, I didn't have anything to add.
Oh, okay. Let's see. So customer satisfaction is our first internal goal that we have. So we want to increase our customer satisfaction rate based on average favorable agreement for I know who to contact to get information and KDE values feedback from 56% in 2024 to 66% by 2029. And then there's the graph for that. We're also looking at KDE is responsive in communications and increasing that score. We're looking at KDE leverages social media effectively. And this is all from the customer survey. And then we have pulse checks that go out on the bottom of our emails twice a year. And so one of the questions is, how satisfied are you with the support that you received from KDE today? And then the other one is the KDE staff member was courteous and professional. So these are the KPIs that we're looking at to help us reach that goal. Process management is another internal goal of ours. So we want to improve average favorable agreement of the operations domain in the employee survey from 84% in 24 to 91% by 29. We're also looking in the employee survey as processes are documented to protect important assets, and KDE regularly reviews and improves its processes. The other thing that we look at is our biennial risk assessment. This will be done again this year. And so KDE policies and procedures covering key financial and operational processes are documented and accessible is kind of where we're leaning right now. Our final one is leadership capacity. So we want to improve average favorable agreement of the KDE leadership domain in the customer survey from 60% in 2024 to 76% by 2029. Our key performance indicators on this are the employee survey. I'm able to develop my professional skills in my current role, so we want to maintain that top decile level. And then we want to increase the overall agreement rating of the employee satisfaction in the KDE leadership domain. Lastly, we have a list of resources on here, and so this is still in draft form. We're still kind of going through. It's going to be a live document. We'll add resources as they're created just to have them here for everyone. One of the things that Dr. Fletcher talked about earlier, the local accountability design guide and toolkit is also linked in here, so you can get to that. And then we've kind of broken it out by goals. So if you're looking for something for educator recruitment, then you should find some things that we've got available out there for that. Okay, so that's all I have to show on the dashboard. So again, I wanted to reiterate the questions that we're looking for today. So how could you use this? How could you drive traffic to this? Is there anything that you think that we are missing or should be including?
I don't care to jump in just for a moment. I think a lot of this data mirrors the work that we're doing locally with our local accountability model. So I think this is a good avenue for us to be able to compare ourselves to the data across the state, just as we're presenting to our community, whether we're exceeding some of this data or we're falling behind. I think it's a good grounding method for us to compare ourselves to as we're looking across the state.
Thank you, Chair Ballinger. One of the things that Karen Dodd, who is the supervisor, and she's the chief performance officer, excuse me, for the department, and she's over the entire strategic plan. One of the things that we've been discussing is doing maybe a district spotlight. So finding some of those districts who have within these goals have had some sort of success or could be considered like an exceptional, and then we could do some spotlights and some things to help us connect districts together. So how do you all think about that? What do you feel?
Susan, are you able to see the chat? We had a question.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. It just came through.
Okay, so the question says, has there been any discussions on tracking retention in K and first grade as required by HB 240 in 2025? So this is around our current strategic plan, which was created in 2024. So I'm not sure that we've talked about that yet. Dr. Fletcher, do you have anything to add to that?
That's a topic we've talked a little bit about, but we haven't really looked at tracking data for that. Because, you know, as Superintendent Hamilton pointed out in House Bill 240, it requires that if you're not meeting the benchmarks by first grade, it's required to hold students back or have that that discussion with parents as far as they move forward. But we haven't had any discussions on tracking that data in particular, not at this point. Also, Mickey Ray points out, Mickey Marinelli pointed out, we can look at this as reported in Infinite Campus, though. That's a great point. Thank you for that.
So as you all peruse this, if you have any questions or you want to share any feedback with us, please feel free to do so. You can email myself or Karen Dodd directly, or on the top of this, we have a generic KDE strategic dashboard email that will come to both myself and Karen if you have anything that you would like to add. So thank you for your time.
Okay, anyone have any last minute questions for Mrs. Strange before we move on? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate the information. Next, we have joining us Dr. Terry Scott, who is the Executive Director of the Kentucky Reading Research Center. He's going to provide information on letters in Kentucky. Dr. Scott. I believe you might be muted.
How about now?
Perfect.
Sorry about that. Had a different setting on. Thank you all for giving me the chance to speak with you. I'll try to be brief. I would like to use this time to describe what the Kentucky Reading Research Center is doing and the services that it offers to the state of Kentucky and beyond. So we have been funded for a couple of years now, and currently we are just getting ready to begin our third year. Our first 2 years have been heavily leveraged toward getting our website done. And so our website is now up and running. It's kyreadingresearch.org. And there are a lot of things on there that are resources, and I'll take a little time to describe some of those as we go through. We've been around, like I said, for a couple of years. This center was mandated by a Senate bill. We're just beginning our second of 2-year contracts, and we work very closely with the Kentucky Department of Ed. In my many years in higher ed, having projects with educational partners in Kentucky and other states, this is by far the most collaborative project I've ever been involved with. We meet with Mickey Ray Marinelli and her staff regularly. We truly do collaborate on what is our research, how are we putting things together, what kinds of supports do we need. And so this is a kind of hand-in-hand venture with us and KDE. The scope of our work is broad, but I'm going to summarize it in 3 points. One, our first goal is to get information, make information available to everyone in Kentucky. And that means teachers, administrators, parents, policymakers, etc. So we're trying to make everything that we know about the science of reading available to each of those constituencies. Second, we are doing research. So we create research questions based upon things we know. The dashboard we just saw is a perfect example of data that would lead us to say, I wonder how that relates to, and presents a research question for us. We are mandated to do some research, and I will describe some of that, but a lot of it is just in collaboration with KDE. And then third, we have developed and are continuing to develop what we call a clearinghouse. And it's not a clearinghouse of the traditional way people might think of a clearinghouse. What we have done is created a place where we can go in and see a broad range of effective practices for different constituencies, whether I'm a early childhood teacher, an elementary teacher, a secondary teacher, a parent, etc. And so I'll speak a little bit later about specifically what we're doing with that and what you can find. But I think those are our three big areas. And again, the whole idea is get the information out to anybody and everybody in Kentucky. So the center proposal was written by Dr. Amy Lingo and myself a few years ago. Dr. Lingo has now moved on to be a dean in another state. However, she is still very much involved in this project, and her children still go to school in Kentucky. So we are jointly directing this center now. One of the first things we thought of when we were funded is that we need a nationally, internationally recognized advisory board. And so our advisory board is made up of 6 people. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. This is our research team. Dr. Caitlin Chris, who is at Georgia Southern University with Dr. Lingo, Dr. Aaron Hogan and Dr. Todd Whitney, who are faculty members here at the University of Louisville. And then our National Advisory Board, Dr. Michael Coyne at the University of Connecticut, Dr. Holly Lane at the University of Florida, who developed the UFly, Dr. David Page at the University of Northern Illinois, Deborah Reed, who directs the Tennessee Reading Research Center, Dr. Sharon Vaughn, who is, I think, widely considered the preeminent reading expert in the world, and Dr. Jade Wexler at the University of Maryland. So we rely on this board to give us feedback when we create things for the website, when we build things that go into our clearinghouse, when we do research. We bounce those things off of this group and say, what do you think? Where would you go next? A lot of times we're asking them very specific questions about, should we break foundational literacy down like this or like this in order to get the best information out to people that use it? So we really rely on their expertise. In the coming year, they're going to start doing some webinars for us that will be put on our website and available. We know we've got Holly Lane doing one for us, and we're currently working on getting a couple of others set up right now. So in year 1, we began our first task, which was to do evaluations of the Read to Achieve program.
Your daddy for Father's Day.
So,
She got.
so there had been, from past centers, evaluations done like this. We wanted to do a couple of things. One, we wanted to keep some semblance of that so there was comparison across years. 2, we wanted to add some questions that we thought were important to try to get at some other things we wanted to look at. And 3, we felt like it was important to go to these schools, not all of the schools, but to randomly sample schools, go in and sit in classrooms and watch, and also to interview the school literacy teams. And so in year 1, we set up what we were going to do with this, and we ran a smaller version, which is a much bigger version this year. It's been very interesting to do this. Some of the things that we've found would not surprise anybody. Teacher turnover is associated with poorer outcomes, those kinds of things. But it's given us more questions to answer. It's made us start thinking about what kinds of things make teachers want to be in the business and what kinds of things make teachers want to stay in the business. And we've got some research questions going around some of those things right now. We've also, as I mentioned, been developing the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse will have systematic literature reviews of some of what we would consider to be the best science we've got in each of these areas. Those literature reviews are scientific, comprehensive, and probably not the kind of thing the average person would want to sit down and read. But once we get those done, then we translate them into what are the essential components that we know are necessary if we were to do a good job with literacy instruction at these different levels. For instance, we would say at the foundational level, which is what we would consider to be kindergarten through probably at least fifth grade, we know that those 7 things, starting with phonological and phonemic awareness, are really important. And those all appear in the lit review. But what we wanted to do is break them out. So one could read the lit review, the white papers that are on the website, but below them are these actual headers where you could click on them and get a deeper dive. In addition, with each of these, as time goes by, there will be a set of videos. So one could say, I'd like to see what fluency looks like if I'm teaching 4th grade. And this will continue as we go through the years to blossom out. I'd like to see what fluency looks like in 4th grade with kids that are not English language speakers. I'd like to know what, and so we're going to continue to build these videos. We've just started doing that this year. We want to shoot them in real Kentucky schools. We've been this year in Carroll County and in Boone County in schools shooting, I shouldn't use the word shooting, videoing real teachers and real kids in classrooms showing how these things work. We will also have emergent, which is early childhood and things that families would do at early childhood. We'll have family and adult literacy also, and these are all being built out as we speak. In years 1 through 4, we've got research. And as I mentioned, our first year's research was really setting up the RTA survey and getting ourselves ready for that. But while we were out in the classrooms, we took a lot of data. So every time we went into a classroom where a teacher was teaching literacy, we took data. So we know what teachers in Kentucky do when they're teaching literacy. What's more interesting is that we can actually connect a lot of those teacher behaviors to school outcomes. From some previous research we did, we know some very basic things like the degree to which the teacher engages the students with opportunities to respond is extremely significantly related to both the students' active engagement during instruction and to a decrease in misbehavior. What we're trying to do now is provide more examples of how do we use opportunities for engagement during literacy, and how do you do that with little kids, with elementary kids, with kids in secondary. And so again, the more we answer these questions, the more it gives us work to do with further refining them with research and with presenting examples of what that should mean in practice. So that research to practice link is a real key for us in the way we think about this. One example of research that we just finished this year is an analysis of the letters implementation in Kentucky. So what we did was we have a database of all the teachers in the state who have completed letters training and the schools that they're in. We have a methodologist, data analyst, statistician that works with us. And so we were able to sit down, KDE and us, and say, what are the questions here? And the questions became, to what degree do we believe letters trained teachers in a school make a difference? And the big significant finding that came out of that was that the more schools have teachers that are trained in letters, the more growth we see into the proficient level with students in literacy. And if you were to go to our website, again, kyreadingresearch.org, this full report is available. So, like I keep saying, every time we get data and write a report, it asks more questions. And so we'll be digging into this further. To what degree do these things make a difference when we talk about kids with disabilities, kids that are ELL, et cetera? And so we're going to continue to break this down and dig into it deeper. In the coming year, we're going to be talking more about coaching and looking at what's the impact of coaching. There is a lot of coaching going on in Kentucky. I think it's something we should be really proud of, the fact that this has been built in this way. What we have to be able to do is figure out what exactly constitutes coaching, how much of that is happening, and then we can begin to look better at what difference is that making. And so that's something we're trying to play with right now. This is back to the Read, Do, Achieve survey. One of the interesting things that came out of that was that when we asked teachers why they would have difficulty implementing the science of reading in their classroom, number one in their view was they don't have enough time. Well, I think that's rather an easy fix. We can help people think about being more efficient with their curriculum. We can talk about what kinds of things in the classroom give you the biggest bang for your buck. The second one was student behavior. And this is something we've been coming up against for quite a while now, and we're trying to do some more research on this. So one of our questions is, how ready are teachers, new teachers, to deal with student behavior? And that's been a bit of an eye-opener too, is that teachers are telling us they really don't know what to do with behavior, and many of them aren't expecting that they'll have to deal with behavior for some reason. So we're doing some research with how much tutorial, for lack of a better word, do teachers need on how to handle the most typical problem behaviors before they become fluent with those things. We've also been looking at burnout, and we've been looking at how stressful it is when kids misbehave and teachers don't know what to do. And so we're now trying to practice with some students. One of the things we did that was kind of interesting is we put a wristband on teachers, brand new teachers, pre-service teachers, brand new teachers, 4-year teachers, and 10-year teachers. And we had them watch videos of a classroom where we've set it up so the student will eventually curse at the teacher and threaten the teacher, etc. And we found that teachers that have been teaching for 10 years, nothing happens to their pulse, their respiration, anything when that happens. But the less time a teacher's been teaching, the more that blows them up. Brand new teachers, their sweat increases by 4 in 1 second when that happens. And so a lot of this, again, is us trying to help higher ed better prepare teachers for the things they're going to see in the classroom. And finally, again, I think this kind of encapsulates a lot of what we've been talking about, that our whole frame of reference is people in Kentucky. How do we reach out to them? How do we engage them? So we've got our website, we've got newsletters. If you go to our website, there's a place to sign up to get our regular newsletters. We want people coming to the website. We want people looking at our videos. We want people taking that information. And if there are questions, we certainly welcome people contacting us. Again, that website address is kyreadingresearch.org. We absolutely, as I said, want people to contact us, whether it come through the website or otherwise. We serve you. So we want to know what you need, and we want to be responsive to that. Again, our collaboration with Mickey and her staff is a almost daily occurrence. And so we are very close in thinking about what do we need to do next and how best to get our resources in order to do that. So I'm willing to take any questions you have right now, but I again just want to thank you for giving me the chance to have this conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Scott before we move on in our agenda? Seeing none, thank you for joining us today and appreciate all of this valuable information.
Thank you all.
Next on our agenda, we have Dr. Jennifer Stafford, Associate Commissioner, and Shara Savage, Division Director of the Division of Assessment and Accountability and Support in the Office of Assessment and Accountability. Today, they will be sharing an assessment and accountability update.
Thank you, Dr. Ballinger, and good afternoon, everyone. I just want to start out by saying thanks to all of the districts and your district assessment coordinators, building assessment coordinators, and test administrators. We are off to the races on our testing. We have over 98 districts that have started or have some level of assessments going, and over 250,000 tests that have been completed. So that's not students, that's individual tests that they take. So we are off and running, and so far, no huge type of issue with online or any of those. So it's nice to report some positive news there. As far as our updates, I want to make you aware of a change that we saw in Senate Bill 197, Section 15. Press release was sent out last week. I hope you were able, as educators, superintendents, able to see that and receive that. On April 15th, the final day of the legislative session, the General Assembly passed Senate Bill 197. And in that bill, it had an impact on our college admissions exam. And you can see here from the on the slide, the language that was added to that Senate Bill 197. The bill included a section that was related to the Kentucky's college admissions exam that would place limitations on the use of general funds, that those general funds could not be used for a norm reference test that was not aligned to the Kentucky academic standards, and that a new procurement would have to be issued for the college admissions exam to be implemented in the 26-27 school year. So at that point, we began working toward informing and making corrections to the language on that, because a norm reference assessment is not aligned to the Kentucky academic standards. Our assessment that we have created based on the Kentucky academic standards is a criterion referenced assessment, and that's the Kentucky Summative Assessment and our alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment. That those norm reference tests that are offered by national vendors are based on national surveys, national curriculum that has the vendors have developed over time, whether it be their own standards and information that they've received from post-secondary based on their own standards. So with that, if you'll go to the next slide, Aaron, the governor had the opportunity to veto. And so on April 27th, he did veto that first part removed the limitation on the use of funds. However, he did leave for a new procurement to be administered or released. So the governor did veto the first few lines of the new language that was added to Senate Bill 197, but did leave the language that you see here on the slide.
And
So
to
now-
add, Jennifer, to be clear, we went through the procurement process that was overseen by the cabinet, and started this in 24. And so we're required to go back through the same process that we've already gone through to name the current vendor. So again, it'll be interesting to see what bids will look like after it comes out of the procurement. But again, we've been asked to go back through the same process that we've already gone through less than 2 years ago.
That's correct. So then exactly, Commissioner, the next slide. So we are going to conduct another procurement, the very similar to the one that we just went through that resulted in a contract that was in place beginning July 2025 that we had a protest against at that point, and that was all of those were worked through. Had an administration this spring that went well, and so we are right now in the process of returning the scores from that college admissions exam that was given to our students in the spring of 26. So we'll go through that process again, and but it takes about 18 months to go through the procurement process. So Commissioner just mentioned we started in 2024 for the with the bid for the current contract, and we know how long that takes. So, however, we have reached out to the Finance Administration Cabinet, who facilitated the last procurement, to see that if we could speed up the time frame that it takes to get a procurement through the process. And they have committed to the department that they would efficiently and effectively work through a new procurement, because they do understand that the legislation calls for the implementation of this in the 26-27 school year. So we're talking about the spring assessment for the college admissions exam in 2027. Therefore, Kentucky will not begin the school year in 26-27 knowing which college admission exam will be administered in the spring of 27. But I want to assure superintendents that the Kentucky Department of Education, we understand the uncertainty that this brings for our schools and district, that districts want clarity as they plan for the upcoming school year. But we want to assure you that KDE is working with the Finance Administration Cabinet. We're working collaboratively, we're working diligently with them to complete this competitive bid. And so, again, this legislative requirement for a new procurement process has created that uncertainty, but KDE is actively managing internal and external timelines so that we can meet this statutory obligation and we can get that in place. Now, our goal is to, again, have a procurement process that is followed, that model procurement 45A, that we will follow it to the T. We will not vary one bit from that, because we want to secure a contract and have it in place so that we can move forward. So the timeline, we are hoping that we get it as fast as possible. The Finance and Administration Cabinet has said that the earliest possible, if every single thing goes well and on time, would be sometime in October. So that is, again, well into the 26-27 school year. I'll note for you that our current vendor, we had started the planning process for the spring of 27. Due to this new requirement, this new legislative requirement, we have halted the planning process for the spring 2027 because of the uncertainty of which vendor or which assessment that will be given. So plans have ceased. I will note for you that there were some training dates held by our co-ops and that we're going to leave on their calendars for training. Those trainings were in November, but we are reaching out to those co-ops to change that from and make it a generic type of hold on the training. Instead of it saying SAT training, we're going to ask them to hold it to say college admissions exam training. So again, just wanted to assure you that we are working as quickly and diligently as possible. And I do see we have a hand up.
Yes, I think it's Superintendent Robinson.
Hi.
Hey, thank you so much for that information, and I can only imagine how challenging it is to plan this in such a short period of time. I just want to make sure I have some clarity. It's really clear based on your presentation. In the spring, we could have the same vendor. We could have a different vendor too. I guess my question is there a scenario if we don't have these timelines that there would be no state provided college readiness assessment in the spring? Yeah, I'll end it there. That's the third piece, is the one that I'm less clear about.
So that's a good question. It would be the goal of the department to have a college admissions exam for our juniors in spring of 27. We do not want to get into a situation that our students don't have the opportunity that is granted to them. And so the goal would be not to have that. And we have some commitment from our finance and administration cabinet to work diligently through this so that it is in place for those students.
So I would imagine there's legislation that requires that as well.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Dr. Stafford before we move on for more of her presentation?
All right, well, I will then turn it over to Shara. We do have House Bill 257. As you know, that we've been working with the Kentucky United We Learn initiative, and Susan Strange did mention it earlier. You know, we've been working on legislation to impact our future accountability system. We've had lots of good engagement from all of our stakeholders, and we've gone through model frameworks and prototypes over the past few years. And so we're excited to be moving forward on that piece of legislation that that Shara is going to give you an overview of.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. Please go to the next slide, please. So last month, as you may have heard, the bill to reimagine Kentucky's assessment and accountability systems was passed and signed by the governor. Next slide, please. So House Bill 257 provides an opportunity for districts to develop locally developed indicators of quality. At a high level, these are measures that districts create or adopt that are still aligned to Kentucky's academic standards, but allows students to demonstrate learning in more applied, real-world ways. This could include students' well-being, school safety, and other local priorities that matter to your community. The bill also defines vibrant learning, which is really about student-centered experiences, which students apply their learning through projects and partnerships with families and communities, and experiences connected to their interests and their future career goals. The districts are not required to implement a local system that includes these indicators, but may choose to do so. And if you do, there are some important requirements, such as including disaggregated student data and making results publicly available online. KDE will support this work through technical assistance and may offer a one-time payment of up to $15,000 to help districts get started. Next slide, please. So first and most importantly, for the 25-26 school year, it's important to emphasize that KSA testing remains the same because we are in the middle of it now. It remains for spring 26 remains the same. There are no changes to grade levels or the content area. Students will continue to be assessed in reading and mathematics, science, and social studies. Writing will still include editing, mechanics, and on-demand writing, and will remain in place along with the quality of school climate and safety survey for this year. Likewise, AKSA, the alternate Kentucky Summit Assessment, will also remain the same for spring 26. Data reporting for 2026. So this fall, when we start the data report, the quality control for the data that we are administering this spring, when that starts coming in, there are no changes. So data reporting for 26 will remain unchanged, and it's continuing to use status and change. State calculations with status and change will continue to determine school color ratings. Federal classifications with the 3-year average will continue to determine classifications such as CSI, your TSI, and ATSI. So overall, the key message for this year here is stability, that no immediate changes to assessment or accountability for the spring, allowing districts and yourselves to continue your work with consistency and confidence. Next slide, please. Now, looking ahead to the 26-27 school year, we do start to see changes for KSA. While testing will continue across the same grade levels, there are some key components being removed from the state testing program. This includes editing and mechanics, on-demand writing, and the quality of school climate and safety survey. For AKSA, we also see a streamlined approach with writing and the survey being removed. Writing now is still being emphasized, is still very important to Kentucky. Each superintendent must adopt and publish a writing program that includes writing across the curriculum. KDE must provide school districts with guidance and professional development opportunities to support the writing across the curriculum. In addition to these assessment changes, there are important updates on the accountability side. So beginning with that 26-27 school year, chronic absenteeism will be introduced as a new indicator. Growth will be introduced as a new indicator, and change will be removed. So this marks a shift in how we define and measure success for students in Kentucky. The key takeaway here is that while testing structures structures remain familiar, we are beginning to transition into a more focused assessment model and shift how student progress is measured over time, beginning in that 26-27 school year. Next slide, please. So in this section, the bill focuses on additional measures that reflect both educator quality and student readiness at key transition points. First, it measures the percentage of certified teachers who have advanced credentials, such as your rank 2 or your national board certification. It also includes at the middle school a percentage of students earning a high school credit by the end of grade 8. And then finally, at the high school level, it focuses on the FAFSA completion, recognizing both students who have completed the application and those families who formally opt out after receiving information with a district approved form. So next slide, please. So I've given you a pretty high level overview of House Bill 257, but the important takeaway here is as we move forward, we'll continue to engage with key stakeholders, including thought partners and the commissioners' councils, to gather input and guide the development of the policy to align with House Bill 257. This collaborative work, as you can see in this timeline on your screen, will support the Kentucky Board of Education in establishing an effective implementation approach. Again, our focus remains on ensuring clarity, consistency, and a shared understanding as we transition into the next phase of our assessment and accountability system. So I'll pause there and see if you have any questions. Great. Jennifer, do you need to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add one note here for you. This is an aggressive timeline for changing an accountability system and moving a regulation forward. You can see here that our goal is to have a working session with the Kentucky Board of Education in June. With the first read of a regulation in August. So we're working through commissioners' advisory councils, other stakeholder groups that are meeting. Our hope is that Aaron will put us back on this agenda at your next meeting so that we can talk with you again about those regulatory changes as we move forward in the development of that regulation.
And I'll add to it some of the things that this group. And again, we're not looking for you to have input at this today, right on the spot. But some of the things that I want you to kind of put your mind around, and you're welcome to send us emails, and also have this in our next Superintendent Advisory Council. What are some thoughts on growth? We're even approaching the idea of growth in high school. Comparing the 8th grade assessment with the 10th grade assessment. So that was something that was not in the previous growth model before. So some ideas that you may have about that, maybe some how we're implementing growth. You're welcome to provide some input on that too. Again, as part of this advisory council, and other ideas that you may have as it relates to the formula itself. Right now the climate safety survey is 4% of the accountability model, but it's going to get replaced by chronic absenteeism. What are some recommendations from this group here? Just so that you know, the board, the Kentucky Board of Education, does have final say-so on what the percentages are. But if you have some input on that, you're welcome to send that over to Jennifer also too, so we can share that with other advisory councils as we move forward. We don't have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, I don't think we have specific questions to look at today, but again, just to let them know where we are, what the timeline is, and to give them an opportunity for some thought and some feedback later on.
Absolutely.
So any questions on, are there any more, I'm sorry, Sherry, are there any more slides on this, in this area?
No, this is it.
Great job, ladies. But any questions for our two specialists here so that, I can defer to the experts if there's any questions. Because typically Jennifer has to clean up whatever questions that I answer. So
You do very well.
Yes, yes, you do.
All right.
All
all right,
right.
Dr. Ballinger, I guess we'll
Thank-
turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Stafford, and thank you, Ms. Savage, for that information. And if any questions or comments from this group, please feel free to reach out to either of them or to the commissioner to provide your comments or questions if you do have those. Last on our agenda, we have Brian Perry with us, the Director of Government Relations in the Office of the Commissioner, to provide a legislative update. Dr. Perry.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. You can go to the next slide. You can keep going. We've already covered 257. One more. So the board passed through legislative priorities back in the fall. Just kind of wanted to quickly mention that we were able to address a large number of them. House Bill 727 became an omnibus bill. We'll talk about a little bit at the end. The one thing that's in 727 that I think will be of most interest to you all is the replacement of KEPS within statewide job portal and common application. That'll be funded through the existing certification and recertification fees. So no new appropriation was needed. We just needed a little more authority to spend those dollars on this new system. I'm not sure what the timeline is on that. I know that OELE is working on that, but I think it's a pretty exciting change. Yes, Dr. Fletcher.
I do have a little bit of information. We're hoping to have this up and running by February. So February of next year to have this going through. Some of the things that to keep in mind too, we've asked for certain features in the system. We will probably be even asking districts of what features they would like to see in this system. For example, we would want a district to have the opportunity to add, like if there's some other requirements that you want to add to the system that would be specific to maybe Fort Thomas Highlands or maybe Jenkins or any other area, to make sure that you have the opportunity that you can add to it and make it more personalized for yourself. But the key here is we want to make sure that districts, for example, if you're in the western part of the state and you've posted for a middle school mathematics position, you don't have any applicants, as long as teachers have opened their application statewide, then you can view any application across the state. So if there's someone that didn't get a job in Knott County as a middle school math teacher, and it's possible for Carlisle to look at the application, at least to call and say, hey, have you considered coming to Western Kentucky? As my friend Coy Sammons says, is on God's time. I'm not sure I agree, but he says that Western Kentucky is God's time. So, and maybe they could do a selling point to bring somebody that way. But again, and then vice versa, if someone is in Floyd County and they want to look at maybe an application in Kenton or a position in Kenton County, they can apply and send their application either to certain districts or a region or even statewide. So the teacher would also have the option of saying, we want this to go maybe to one or two districts, a region, or they could pick out 7 or 8 districts throughout the state or to the entire state. So it would go 2 ways. Superintendents, principals have the opportunity to look at applications that are out there. And then also too, the teachers that are applying could send them to other areas other than just maybe Lawrence County or something like that. So I'm really excited about this. And again, we are working through the process to make sure everything gets on track, but we're hoping to have this up and running by February.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Commissioner also mentioned that we have posted initial guidance for House Bill 67. I posted that link in the chat. It's at the end of this presentation as well. The first part of that guidance document is really just related to the traceable communications changes. So the cleanup to last year's SB 181. That House Bill 67 also had most of what was in Senate Bill 3, the Financial Responsibility and Transparency Bill, added to it. So we will cover that in the main guidance document that should be out at the end of the month. So next slide, please. So just a real high level slide on the budget bill. You'll see that the SEC appropriation goes up a little bit in each year of the biennium. We worked hard on SEC transportation, just so everyone knows. As soon as that bottom number came out toward the beginning of the session, we shared that widely with members and staff. It didn't get done, obviously, so transportation stays about 81% funded. We will continue to push that. A big change that I think flew under the radar a little bit the academic academies that you see listed there, those students will no longer count toward your seat calculation. And so that's a big change from years past. They did up the appropriations a little, I believe, for those academies through the line items for the universities. But that's a big change. And one that I think kind of flew under the radar and hasn't been discussed a whole lot. So just want to make sure you all were aware of that change. So underneath the LARS items in the budget for KDE, we have a number of programs that are funded from the department level that are essentially services for your all's districts. Just highlighting this because the Senate wanted to really move toward more of a block grant approach that would send those dollars to your all's districts and sort of let you spend them on those initiatives as you please. The issue from our side is that we can't offer those services kind of funded that way. So I do think this will be a continuing conversation over the next couple of years as we head into the next budget session. So just kind of wanted to put that on the radar. The ATCs are included in the supplemental funding. However, they did appropriate a significant amount of money, additional amount of money for that supplemental funding that should hold your districts harmless. So we just want to make sure you were aware of that. There also was some language not aimed at you all, but it could potentially impact services to your districts from KDE in that there's a reduction in travel for the fourth quarter. So we're still kind of working through some of that. Once we get into the next fiscal year, the language changes a little bit. And so I don't think it should be as much of an issue. But in the meantime, there could be some disruption of services from KDE to your districts as it relates to staff traveling to your districts.
I'll add, I really, a couple of disappointing things here. First of all, the academic academies flew completely under our radar too. That came through. Don't really know where that came from, but it scooted in there as we went through. And I was really disappointed about the SEEK transportation. We did get that number out. I texted that personally directly to Petrie and also met with McDaniel one-on-one as soon as that number was calculated to talk to them about it. And I really felt we had some headway there. But then at the end of the day, there was no addition in the SEEK transportation. So again, it wasn't from lack of effort. We really thought that I'll say I really thought there may be some increase there in transportation, but unfortunately there was not. So we'll do our best to keep working on that as we move forward.
Any questions on the budget? Next slide then. Kind of move along. There were some reductions in House Bill 500. Again, not really related to your all's districts, but I kind of use the same slides for all these presentations. There's a lot of them this time of year. So next slide. House Bill 900 was another appropriations bill. It included that supplemental funding for CTE. That again, as we pull those ATCs into that supplemental funding, should help hold your districts harmless. It also included the funding related to Senate Bill 263 for the Schools of Innovation. So one initial project is named in the statute for Covington Independent. There's also another $5 million appropriated for 2 schools to be selected at a date to be determined. And then there's also the FCC funding included there as well.
And I'll add again on the School of Innovation pilot project that this one is a little bit different because in one area in the bill, there is funding directly to is it Educate NKY, and then another one to the Northern Kentucky Area Development District that for that $2.5 million. We have asked for an opinion from the Attorney General just to make sure that this funding can go directly to this group. As far as we'll see what they have to say, but with that being said, that one was unusual a little bit, but that would be 2.5 million. But there, on the other hand, there is, if that goes through, and as far as the Attorney General opinion, again, we're wanting cover to make sure that we're following what we need to do here. But if that's the case, then there's $5 million there for 2 additional schools to look at some type of innovation pilot project if anyone would be interested. And of course, you're welcome to reach out to us to talk about that. We'll try to help you through the process as long as everything goes forward. It makes sense that we go directly to a school, and then that school could send it on to a group if they needed help, things of that nature. But also too, the SFCC, one of the things that some districts may have had some issues with was the gap funding. There were some schools that were depending heavily on gap funding that did not get funded. But others did receive some SFCC. So congratulations, and in all honesty, congratulations to those that did receive the SFCC funding, because as a former superintendent, I know how important that is. And when we were unable to pass the nickel, it was just very difficult for us to get any additional funding whatsoever. So congratulations to everyone that did get the funding. And again, if there's anything we can do to help other districts, we'll try our best to do that also too.
Dr. Perry,
we do-
before you go on, I think that Dr. Hamilton had a question in the chat about textbooks for Gatton Academy and Craft Academy districts have traditionally paid for those. Since they are no longer part of our SEEK funding, will that responsibility be taken on by the universities?
I don't think that was a requirement. I think districts did that on their own before, like for example, Lawrence County did. But as far as and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Perry, I don't think that paying for the books for the students was ever a requirement. It was something that we did as a decision of the local district. Am I correct on
I
that,
believe
Dr.
that's
Perry?
correct. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
All right, next slide, please. So I think we've already covered 197. I just will mention that that's where they included that just over 2.5 million to support local accountability. So there's a little flexibility in those dollars. So you may see some more about that coming out.
I'll add a little bit. What we're looking at is probably a window for districts to apply, maybe from like August to maybe April, somewhere along in there, like a window for districts to say, we have checked these boxes, and it'll probably be maybe in the GMAP system or one of the or the Cognia system, one or the other, for a district just to say we check these boxes, and then it would be a $15,000 sum that would be that we would in the first of the next month, whenever the allocations go out, we would make sure that we get that to you. Now, of course, we don't expect every district to have this, so we were given the latitude, if you will, to spend this in other ways, maybe with some specialists to help out with districts. But again, we'll base that solely on how many districts are asking for that $15,000. For those of you that are interested, again, we do have that guidebook and toolkit. So if you have any questions, more than welcome to give us a call. Dr. Foster in her office with Sarah Snipes would be a point of contact for that.
Next slide, please. So this was a budget session, so we had a lot of legislation filed. We tracked about 300 bills out of the gate. A surprising number of them got across the finish line. It gets a little confusing because there was a flurry of activity the last few weeks of the session where a lot of things got combined. So just hang tight. We'll try to get through them. If you have questions, please jump in. So Senate Bill 2 limits administrator and superintendent pay to no greater than the average pay increase for your classroom teachers. So I want to make sure you're aware of that.
And Brian, there is a carve out in Senate Bill 2 that if you can increase that from a local board decision, and there's some options in there that you can go ahead and increase that. And I can't remember the stipulations, but review Senate Bill 2, you can increase your administrative pay, and there's a stipulation in there how you can do that. Now, as far as superintendent pay and other issues, you can ask a waiver of the of the commissioner. If, like, for example, if you're finishing your first contract, you're going to your second contract, and there's a pay increase greater, you can ask for a waiver from the commissioner and things of that nature. But there is a stipulation in there. I'll try to find it and I'll put it in the chat as we go through. But there is something there that would allow you to increase your administrator pay given certain stipulations. So give me just a minute. Brian can go ahead, but I'll put it in the chat.
I think we have a question from Superintendent Hamilton. I see a hand raised.
Dr. Fletcher, I believe is if you're giving the same pay raise to the same job class code, such as principal,
That's
assistant
correct.
principal,
That's exactly it. Mm-hmm.
And you have a reason such as consolidation or something like that is allowable. That's what
Thank
you and
so
I talked
much.
about at STLP.
Thank you. That's right, Superintendent Hamilton. If you're given the same salary to the same class code, in other words, you can't just select one administrator, like let's say principals. you can't select one principal, give them a salary, but if you give all your principals an increase, then you do have some cover there. Thank you for that, Superintendent Hamilton.
So Senate Bill 4 was a principal induction and mentoring bill, or was it? There is a principal induction bill. Kind of a lot of talk about this throughout the session, even before the session, the interim. It settled on being a 4-year principal training program. First 2 years with KDE, third year is with Truist and the Kentucky Chamber Foundation. The fourth year would be an optional year with a menu of options. We got about a little less than half of what we thought we needed to cover those first 2 years. I will say that third and fourth year, because this is a cohort model that would start in the fall, the third and fourth years don't really need to be funded until the next biennium. So we will hopefully see those things get a funding allocation in the next biennial budget, because that Truist year would be following the summer of 28, I guess. So Senate Bill 4 also toward the end picked up some more JCPS language related to taking their board to 5 members and creating the initial map for those new districts. Senate Bill 5 was a Department of Ag initiative, one of their priority bills. It was aiming to get more local Kentucky Proud products into your schools. Obviously, that is a lot more complicated than I realized until we started talking about this bill. I think that this is sort of the first bite at the apple, no pun intended. And I think that we will likely see some more legislation to follow, kind of building on this initial initiative. I think I saw another hand go up. So,
Yeah, Superintendent Molly.
Thank you. Real quick, I just wanted to circle back to Senate Bill 4. At
Sure.
one point, I thought there was some language that if a principal was still under the 3 years, that they would insert themselves into the appropriate cohort year. Is that not the case? Is it just going to start with new principals next year, and that will be cohort 1 that will do a 3-year cycle?
That was my understanding, but in all fairness, there's so many changes late in the day that they might have made a small change like that, but I'll double check. But my understanding was
Superintendent Molly,
it
it is our understanding it would start with cohort 1 with the new principals. If that's different, we will get that back out to you. But and Dr. Perry's absolutely correct. There were so many changes there at the end, but our last change that we felt like went through was whoever new principals will be cohort 1. And essentially, they'll be a part of a training that we are working with in the first 2 years.
Okay. When we say new principals, we should clarify that we're talking about initial new principals, not principals that are changing schools. I think it's just those first-time principals. I guess instead of new, we should say first-time principals.
Okay, and that tracks, because I think that language might have been in the first draft when it was a 5-year plan, and they were going to insert people within those.
That was the Senate version. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Superintendent
Dr.
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Just a follow-up question, like Chad said, what if you have an assistant principal that's been an assistant 3 years and they move to the principal role? Will those 3 years, will they have to have the training as well, or will the assistant principal years, would that be like almost a lateral transition?
My understanding would be that would be who would qualify and be part of that next cohort.
And the way we're interpreting that right now, Superintendent Hamilton, is if you're a first-year head principal, then you will be a part of cohort 1.
Thank you.
Sure. We'll try to move through this a little quickly. I know we're already well into the second hour here. Senate Bill 46 was a long-awaited clarification on some transportation language related to 9-passenger vehicles. Senate Bill 101 is the Common Sense Bill, I believe was the name that they gave it. Relates to students that intentionally cause harm to a school employee. We did try to work with the sponsor and make sure that your students in special ed classrooms are covered there with that language. Senate Bill 263 was the Innovation Fund. I think we've talked about that quite a bit. So those are the Senate bills. I know that's a really quick rundown of the last 3 or 4 months, boiled down to a couple of minutes. Are there any other questions about any of these Senate bills before we go to the House?
Just a quick comment. We've talked so much about this school bus passenger vehicle. We've named this the Che Ritter bill. That seems like every 2/3 of the conversations I've had with Che has been on this bill. But hopefully we've got everything clear, and we will be having regulations on this bill in the June board meeting. So just so that you know.
All right, with that, let's move over to the next slide. Talk about some House bills. So House Bill 1, I don't know that I have a whole lot else to say at this point on. That is the federal tax credit bill. I think we are awaiting some regulations from the federal level before next steps on our end. House Bill 4 was an anti-grooming bill, which defines grooming behavior. That was a big step to address that. It's not focused solely on educators. It's a broader bill, but it does include educators in part of the bill. Senate Bill 7 was Representative Hale's perennial stop arm bill. It was his last session, so not surprised to see this one get a low number. It is permissive, so it is not a requirement, but it does allow it. Senate Bill 10, just kind of mentioned in passing, but the chairs of several boards and positions will now require Senate confirmation. That includes the KBE and EPSB, so kind of a new twist on those. 253 was Chair Tipton's 3 queuing prohibition. Again, that's one that we've seen filed several times now. That finally got across the line. That also included his Senate or House Bill 102. That was his kind of misconduct bill. Again, we've seen him carry that bill for a number of years now. Got out of both chambers a few years ago and got hung up in concurrence. This is the version that got done. It does prohibit non-disclosure agreements, so please make sure you take a look at 253 if you have not already. Of course, we will have some guidance on that when that comes out at the end of the month. See a question or hand.
Superintendent Sizemore.
Just a quick question on 253 with the 3 queuing prohibition. So do we feel like, Commissioner Fletcher, that this will be something that we'll need to look at letters training that will be a requirement, or any questions like that? Any requirements, I should say.
Dr. Faber, I think there's a phase-in process for this. Brian, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
I don't have a whole lot to say other than I think that does get phased in. I'm sure that Mickey Marinelli and her team will cover this thoroughly in the guidance document. And we may see some sorry, I was just trying to check the website. I think they posted some guidance, some supplemental guidance already on a different bill. So we may see some supplemental guidance on this one as well. And just in kind of on that note, broadly, if you do have questions in your district kind of bubbling up about any particular bill, please let I or the commissioner know. We are happy to let the offices know if we're getting a number of questions on particular bills that we need to think about doing some supplemental guidance on, or an FAQ on that may not have been as expansive as the initial guidance we were thinking about doing so. Senate Bill 307 or House Bill 307 was one that we worked on quite a bit. Didn't land where we really wanted it to. It's going to require some work from you all on the part of you to get some data from your juniors and seniors. It's trying to get essentially data back to the universities to do proactive admissions and to really let students know which schools they've been proactively admitted to. But it is going to create a bit of a burden for districts and us, we think, to get the necessary data collected and compiled and sent over to the post-secondary institutions.
Honestly, we were hoping that, yeah, we were hoping that this would be similar to the Georgia match. You know, Georgia's KIA equivalent does the letter, like the letter of awarding funding for their keys funding, whatever that acronym may be. And then they also put in there, these are the universities that you qualify for admission to. This is the funding, things of that nature. You know, this would be a bill that would require, it's really helping the universities to recruit students. So we're going to have to come up with a process, whereas the process that we had recommended, and it was agreed upon at one point, was there is a feature in Infinite Campus where we can allow districts to print letters off. If universities would just give us the requirements, you could have hit a button. You could print a letter for every single one of your seniors saying, these are the schools that you qualify for. Again, we would have to get that information from universities, but instead of that, there has to be something where you collect everything, various, personal information for your students and parents, and we have to collect that and then send it to universities, and then they start the recruiting process. Now, I've been told by OET, this is not as simple as just pushing a button, but it is something that we'll have to put together. It may cost us, it's unfunded, and it's something we're going to have to put a little more funding into to make it happen, and also probably two or three staff members to be able to facilitate this, if you will.
So with House Bill 55, just want to make sure that you all pay attention to the federal guidelines on this one. I'm sure that OFO will kind of spell out what to watch for and potential, landmines, if you will, as it relates to kind of the federal rules around this in the guidance document. But it does loosen the reins a little bit on student-based enterprises and selling competitive foods throughout the day. House Bill 562, we worked on quite a bit with the sponsor to set up this new alternative high school diploma. There was also a lot of work with the chamber and some other folks involved to really make sure that this was going to have a meaningful impact in the marketplace. And so for those students that do get this, it really does lead to opportunities post-graduation for them in the workplace. So 757 was the revenue bill, and then 758, just change it. It really just adds your DPPs to the list of people that are notified in those instances when a diversion agreement is developed at the court level.
Going back to 562 for just a second. On 562, the alternate high school diplomas, think of these of your students that were getting the certificates of completion, those higher functioning kids. Okay, these are the higher functioning kids that would have the opportunity to get an alternate diploma. They would also count towards your graduation rates. So before they were not, if they were getting that completion, certificate of completion, they were essentially counting as dropouts for your graduation rate. Now there is a window that opens a little bit more to say, okay, if these students are still meeting these requirements, then they can get an alternate high school diploma. Got to be careful though that we're not contributing more to that 1% cap where we're looking at our potential penalty. We're not there yet on exceeding that 1% numbers for our alternate assessment. So again, this is a positive bill in my opinion. We just don't want it to have that impact of increasing the number of students that we have going that are getting the alternate diploma that may be in an alternate assessment. So again, a very good bill. It's looking at giving a meaningful certificate, a meaningful diploma to students that our Truett, who is the sponsor here, worked with different companies, different groups to say, we're going to recognize this as a high school diploma and students can go to work for us. But on the other hand, too, we got to be very careful about how we implement that when it relates to our 1% cap in federal funding.
Thank you, Commissioner. So 757 and a few other bills have some pretty big changes to things like nickels and tax that districts can collect. So when that guidance comes out from OFO, please pay attention to it. It's likely to be pretty lengthy. So just wanted to make sure I flagged that and put that on the radar as you all kind of get ready for those changes. I think that takes us to the next slide. So I mentioned the omnibus bill earlier. So 727 really did become quite an omnibus bill late in the session. It included most all of House Bill 621, that's class sizes for exceptional students. It included almost all of 654. That was the cleanup to House Bill 48 from last session. Just a quick note on that one. There continues to be some real interest in limiting the CSIPs and CDIPs. So that language was taken out of 654 when it got added into 727. So there's no changes to the CSIPs and CDIPs this year. Although I do believe that there are changes to the system that should be, Commissioner, do you know when those are rolling out?
I believe on July 1, we'll have the new platform ready. This should be very much easier to navigate. We took a lot of the input from different superintendents. Dr. Foster took it to Cognia and said these are the issues we're having with navigating that system. So it should be much easier. One of the things that I believe that we struggled with getting with our legislators is if you look at the CSIP, CDIP process that we have and the one platform we have to put all that in, that justifies a lot of areas, for example, for Title I funding. You have to have a strategic plan when it comes to Title I funding. If you're, it satisfies also a lot of other regulations all into one area when it comes to funding. So, there was some, wanting to remove that requirement. But if you'd removed that requirement of having a CSIP or CDIP, you probably would have had to come up with 2, 3, maybe even 4 different other processes. In other words, it would have created more red tape. Instead of having a one area where this is all collected for you, then, or that for you to put it into anyway, then you would have to have come up with 3 or 4 different other methods of collecting this data, submitting it for like Title I compliance, things of that nature. And so the issues there was, it was good that we were able to clean this up as we went through. And also too, as far as some of the requirements of reports, I think this is the part that would have said, essentially SAR, we couldn't have required SAR. I guess we could have said, well, you're not going to get any funding, but SAR is not required in statute. So it's trying to eliminate a lot of these different reports that we have. And again, we try to tie everything back to a purpose. And actually, we've even made recommendations to the legislature on reports to get rid of. And there's all the ones that people haven't probably looked at in a decade, but every now and then we'll have one legislator say, oh, that's a good report, we need it. Not sure if they've even seen it, but we were trying our best to cut down on red tape when we can. Other areas with red tape, if there's a report that we're asking from you, it's not because we just want another report. It's because we feel like it's necessary for maybe a requirement federally or even from statute.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'll add that one of our suggestions heading into this session, we really brought up quite a lot, was for them to add sunset dates to all of their reports that get added. Part of the problem is, we see all these bills every year and they just, the required reporting just builds up. And like the Commissioner said, over time, reports kind of fall out of interest, but then it's hard to get rid of them. So we've really started to encourage them to stick a sunset date on the reports. So just kind of wanted to mention that. 685 that got rolled in, that's just codifying some changes that were already done in regulation. And then Senate Bill 71 got added, and that probably the biggest change there is it'll include some additional financial training for your board members. Yes, Commissioner.
I will add, Superintendent Sizemore, I sent your question on to Mickey Marinelli. It does not require letters training, but it does require teachers to complete a science of reading, professional learning by 2930. So it doesn't have to be letters. I'm assuming things like UFly, other things like that, as long as it's the science of reading, has to be completed by school year 2930. But if you've completed letters, it would fulfill that requirement. So a science of reading, professional learning by 2930.
And that makes sense. I just have a couple of teachers who are seasoned teachers looking into their retirement piece who have not completed the letters training, and they had some questions that we need to go ahead and sign up because I think that registration opened today. So we were just having some conversations earlier. So I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, you'd reap the benefit early on, but I understand too, as far as teachers that are close to retirement. But again, that it would be some type of science of reading by the year 2930.
All right, next slide. There's the link to the legislative guidance. As I mentioned, that main guidance document should be out at the end of the month. Some supplemental guidance is already posted, and I'm sure more will be forthcoming. I should have updated the slide. The interim calendar is out. So the interim period starts next month and runs through November. I will say that the last 2 years, we've seen an additional IJCE get added in December. So I would say expect that to happen again this time around. So I will post that calendar link in the chat so you have it. A&R and IJCE are probably the ones to keep an eye on. The others may have something pop up, but those are the two that I would pay the most attention to. And then next slide. Before there are any questions, I'll just also mention that tomorrow the KBE is meeting virtually, and the only topic is to start thinking about the next biennium and what legislative priorities they want to address kind of over the next 2 sessions. I just wanted to highlight that because it is a pretty big change from our end to get the board thinking about the legislative sessions kind of on a broader timetable, and to start kind of taking a longer view of the sessions. So just wanted to put that on the radar as well. We will see them develop their or officially adopt their legislative priorities later this probably early fall. But anyway, just wanted to put that on the radar with that. If there are any questions, happy to take them. Otherwise, that is a pretty condensed take on the 60-day session that just ended.
I do want to emphasize one thing that Dr. Perry said. We've really tried to change our approach in that giving us a longer onboarding ramp, if you will, to prepare for each of the sessions. The board, when we're approving their priorities in October, right before the January session, we've moved that up considerably, and even now start talking with legislators about funding for 2 years from now. So, we'll start working more on transportation once again. Maybe there's a better way to get that number earlier to them, or maybe even a better projection to them earlier, or even things like technology funding, because there's a lot of things that inflation has increased with some of our ESSER funding has gone away. There's some things that we can't afford to pay for when it comes to technology. So we're needing that technology funding from our legislators. So for us, it took us probably in about 9 months of a lift of just talking directly with legislators about the accountability bill, until it really took shape and went on through. So the longer we're trying to build those relationships, we're trying to talk with legislators. As a matter of fact, we have a few legislators that we're going to, I won't say target, but we'll try our best to work with and get to have a better relationship with. Again, I don't have a bad relationship with any of them, as they're all pretty good relationships. A few of them kind of you scratch your head with every now and then, but that's okay. They probably say the same thing about the commissioner. But really trying to just set up meetings along the way to establish relationships so that hopefully we can look at funding as we move forward. So again, I can't emphasize enough to you that if you have something that you're looking at, a project in your district, and you're looking at funding, I would start as soon as you possibly can to talk to legislators about that and get it out to others as much as possible.
And then one last note, don't forget that primaries are around the corner, so make sure you are paying attention to your local primaries. There are several contested races in the primaries that won't have general election opponents, so I just wanted to point that out. And then, of course, we'll see the general election come up in November. The whole state house is up for re-election, and half of the Senate. So we'll likely see some new faces come next January.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. Does anyone have any legislative questions for Dr. Perry before we move on? Okay, before we adjourn, please note the tentative dates for our 26-27 meetings, and November 10th has an asterisk by that. Initially, when that date was sent out, it was November 11th. So if you've already plugged those dates in your calendar, please make sure that you change those. And before we adjourn, does anyone have any lingering questions or thoughts? Okay, seeing none, I will need a motion for us to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
motion, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Everyone have a great rest of your day and great May, and congratulations to all your graduates.